Okay, I'm Denise Jones. I'm the Development Manager for Liverpool Libraries and Information Services. I've got Luma Creations here with me to talk about the making of Little Ears, which was a puppet show that toured around our libraries in 2019, and it got absolutely fantastic feedback from the audience and from all of the staff in the libraries, particularly in the community libraries. So this is going to be a panel discussion to talk about all all of the making and creating of the show. So it was actually written by Oscar Carrasco and produced by Luma Creations. And I've got Oscar here, who is the writer and the director, and also Francisco from Luma. I've got Max Alder, who actually played the narrator for the show. I've got Estibaliz Moure Abad, who was at Higher, who actually played the puppet and was the handler of the puppet. And I've got Antonio de la Torre, the puppet maker and the set designer. So the first question that I would like to ask is to Oscar. How did you feel seeing your story come to life on the stage with the sort of different characters that you'd actually written about, and to see Little Ears as a puppet?
Frightening.
Frightening.
I would say at the big, frightening completely. I wasn't sure about the reaction of the audience would have, which is because I was taking part in the action within the play, within the story. I couldn't see the whole scenery as a whole. I could see parts of it and see the faces and reactions of the children, which took me aback a bit because I thought it wasn't that. I mean, I wasn't sure. You know, you never kind of like, I wrote these stories, or rather told these stories, because I didn't really write them, or haven't written them all. And it is a collection of things that I told my little son when before going to sleep, because we ran out of books for him. It was very abstract when I was telling my boy about the story, because he would add things and all that. So having to put it all into something which had represented all the ideas that I had to give my son, which were basic knowledge of parts of my ancestors. I've been reading a lot about Native Americans all over the continent at the time. So it was part of kind of imparting that knowledge, remembering stories my grandfather and my mother used to tell me.
It's a story that's obviously very important to you, and I know that when I read a book and then they make a film out of it, that sometimes I'm a bit disappointed that it's not in the same image of the imagination that's in my head about the characters. How much input did you have into the advising on the making of the puppets and things?
Well, I had it's a big say, to be honest. There were a number of ideas that I wanted to make the children aware of within the story, without actually going into details and things like that. You know, like being a school kind of class, where more like just part of the story, as it were. And I was quite impressed, or rather pleased, that all the things I wanted to say in that story is being said. The children actually got it. And also the fact that he attracted all the adults around that took the kids to see the show, and also transient people, because many of them were made in the library, so the other people were quite free of coming and go. And I actually attracted their attention and kept them in there. It was quite surprising in that sense. In that sense, I'm very, very gratified.
Yes. I mean, a lot of people saw it over the tour, and particularly Central Library had quite large crowds, and in the community libraries, it was invited schools, and it was a couple of schools, and I know for a fact that the overall feedback from the teachers and the children, they were absolutely delighted by how interactive it was, and also that no child was actually left out. They all had an instrument to play as well, and really a fun way, I think, to introduce children to other cultures. Move on to Max, who was the narrator, and the story is obviously set in South America. How did it feel to immerse yourself in the culture and to bring that story to life?
I think one of the most interesting things for me is being British born and British educated, but of African Caribbean heritage. It was a long time in my own personal life that I got to understand that Africa is not a country, but it's a continent made up of many, many different things, and there were lots of things that happened there pre-colonial, pre-slavery. However, when it comes to Latin America, I surprised myself at how ignorant I was. Of getting an understanding of pre-European Latin America, and the fact that it's a vast area of very different cultures, of very different histories, lots of different indigenous people that look at the world or look at their world in a very different way than we do in Europe. So I sort of had to completely change my mindset, really, as to getting a grip and understanding what Little Ears was about, but the history behind that as well, and the history in Oscar's ancestors and where he's from, and the way that those people connect to the land and they connect to each other is very, very different from how we do it in Europe. And as I say, it was interesting to look at the fact that Latin America is not one just big homogenous place made up of very similar people, but made up of many, many different cultures. But also then how that, for me, translated into how I look at it nowadays. The fact that it was still easy for me to think of Latin America as the same. They all speak the same language, apart from Brazil and things like that. Whereas in fact, I've learned from my colleagues working with them, there's huge and vast difference between one country and another. Even the language doesn't connect them. The fact that you might say something in one country using Spanish, but in another country in Latin America, you say the same things and it means a completely different thing. That was really interesting to me. And also with the workshops that we did with the children at the end, not that I didn't know, but really understanding how many things in Europe we rely on and think of as normal, things like tomatoes, potatoes, corn. They're all from Latin America. And for me, seeing the children's faces when they realised that, because Francisco used to do this thing where he'd say, you have to give up certain things because they're South American, and then he would list off, you can't have chips, you can't have pizza, stuff like that. So just seeing the chocolate, things like that. So for me, it was obviously I didn't take on a Latin American character in order to perform the piece, but I had to get my head and my mindset into that way of thinking that this is a very, very different way of looking at the world. It's a really interesting way of looking at the world, while still telling a really interesting story that's relevant globally. So yeah.
I mean, I think what I took from it was that there seems to be a connection in a loss of the cultures in South America with nature, and more of an understanding and appreciation of like nature. And I think that there's a sense that in other countries now on other continents, that's actually rising on the agenda. And I think particularly with what's happened this year, that people have actually connected a lot more with like nature in our country, at least, mostly because they've had the time to.
Yeah, which is something we did when we were children, wasn't it? Pretty
exactly.
Much. And I think being part of something that gets people, and as you said, a lot of the adults that watched the piece were as easily connected as the children that were watching. I think you're absolutely right. It's that making that connection back to nature, and the fact that that's where we all come from.
Yeah, and I think that's, you're right there. I think that children are a lot more sort of interested in nature from messing about in the garden with a plant and some soil and some mud, right up to even the history of nature, like dinosaurs and things. And they're just very, 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 very interested in the the world around them, and that includes all of the nature parts, and they do tend to actually notice things that we kind of lose a bit as we grow up, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The next question is going to be for Estee, if that's all right. Your sort of role was to bring the puppet to life. What was that journey like, and how did you feel actually becoming this character with its large range of emotions and also movements, and how sort of difficult was it to immerse yourself in that?
Yes, it was a challenge for me, like an actress, because it's the first time that I work with puppets. I discovered that it's a completely different acting job that I used to do it, because the motions and the actions go through me but appear in him. So I try to expressing less with my face and my body and more with my voice, at the same time to give natural movements in little ears. Yes, it was a really nice experience. And then when I see the reaction of the children, even more, because they don't look at me, they look all the time to little ears. So it's like that I was there, or I am, but not really.
Yeah. So the puppet became you rather than you becoming the puppet. It was more about the character of the puppet rather than your personality going into the puppet.
Yes, but yeah, because I am little ears, but at the same time I am a kind of witness of everything that happening. So I have like a dual vision that is very strange for an actor, because normally you are completely in the scenes, but like with a puppet, no, you can see what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love it, and I want to improve and to keep working in the puppet show.
How much of a connection did you feel that the audience and the children have with the puppet, in the sense of, did it seem like they thought that it was a real person and that you actually became invisible a bit?
Yes, and the reaction always was a surprise, because some children want to touch him, and was a really interactive performance. Sometimes the children participate when I ask questions, and we aren't prepared for this.
So, yeah, it's amazing how children's imagination, on occasion can actually see past the real life of what's actually on stage, and imaginations can actually turn it into something quite sort of magical.
Yeah, and in addition, I want to say that, and for me, like a Latin American and Chilean actress, is a honor to tell the history about a Mapuche boy, because sometimes in Latin America and in Chile, the people don't give a value of that we have.
No.
So when I see that have interest and really have value, is a really amazing. So sometimes when I tell to my friends in Chile that I am working in a puppet show about a Mapuche boy, they cannot believe it. It's like, really? But the English people want to know about Mapuches? Yes.
Oh,
So this is the
oh yes, they do. I mean, I watched it a few times, and I think it's an amazing skill to actually have to actually be able to put a character and personality into a puppet. I think as an actress or an actor, it's a fantastic skill. Thanks, Esther. That's great. We'll move on now to Antonio. Now, you actually made the puppets and most of the set, which was made from recycled materials. Can you tell us how you went from the idea to the final sort of making and realization of the fantastic puppets on the set?
Yeah, I have to say that it was a simpler thing than what it looks like. Well, I start with an idea and everything, but it was also a process of learning because I never did that at this level. I just play with recycling materials. I play with different like toys and puppet, but not without a purpose of create a full performance. So it was a challenge as well, but it was simple because the process of creation, it wasn't like having an idea, throwing everything, and then try to get everything to do what you want to do. It was a process that was building itself. So it's like the material guide you in the process.
Yeah. What sorts of things did you actually use in the set? What things did you actually recycle?
We start because Francisco, he was also very involved in this process. We start with the foam. We use like mattress foam, and I knew that I want to use that because I see somewhere in a video that the faces with this material can give too much expression. So I build a head, and over this, I was creating everything, like the body. We use wires. We use so many things, and we visit that place in London Road. How is it called, Francisco? That place?
Merseyside Play Action Council.
Yeah, we've been there, and it was like when we got into the place, it was like, okay, we have everything we need here. And we just start to pick things. Oh, can we use that? Oh, can we use that other thing? Oh, imagine this for the mountains, or imagine this to do the backdrop, or maybe we can use that to create clouds. And then when we have all the material, we just went to the workshop, and everything was very simple. One thing lead to another.
Yeah, it was an amazing set. And when I had a look at it up close, and Francisco actually pointed out what things were made from, I thought that's really, really creative, and imaginative. I think for smaller theatre companies could actually take a leaf out of your book and look at different ways of recycling things, and I'm sure they do anyway, for obviously for reasons of cost, but also ultimately it's better for the environment. But I think it just adds an extra element to the set, and I think it's a really good example for the audience as well, and the children who are watching, that you can use a range of things to actually make a set or a backdrop that's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, also I want to say that the most gratificant for myself, it was that it was a kind of a try and error and learning process, as long as we did that. And when the puppet, when Little Ear and the other small character like the eagles and the rabbit, when we were creating this and we start to do the rehearsal, then I start to have a feedback from Esti and Oscar, like they were like demanding things. Okay, I like that, but can we do more? It will be better for me if the gap for the mouth is narrow, or can we hook the eagle from that point instead from the other? So we've been like changing things and adapting things to a better and easier performance.
Yeah. Well, it did. It looked great. Really, really vibrant set. Thank you, Antonio. So last but not least, we'll move on to Francisco. Now, there was a mixture of original and traditional music in the show. Could you tell us a little bit about what instruments you actually used?
Yeah, we decided very quickly to try and use traditional instruments plus some recycled instruments. So we made some instruments, and they were part of the end of the show when we did a little proactive session with the children and with the people who came to see the show. And a lot of the instruments we shared were made recycled instruments, so they were made from different things. But the main instruments that we used were the Spanish classical guitar, and the other string instrument was a charango, which is a 5 double string small instrument from the Andean areas of South America. We also use a traditional, very, very special instrument from the Mapuche people, which is what Esti was talking about. The Mapuche are the indigenous people that come from the southern central area of Chile and Argentina. And it was a trutruca, which is like a horn. And the one we used was a circular horn. And Oscar played, which is, at one point I thought he might, collapse, because it's a really hard instrument to play. And he, I was quite amazed at the power of his lungs to play and play and play and not faint. We also use a rainmaker, rain stick, and the rain stick we used is actually from the north of Chile and South Bolivia, Peru. It's from the desert, and it's a cactus, basically. And the way you do it is like a big long stick, but it's a cactus. The thorns from the cactus are took off and pushed inward, and the seeds. That's why when you turn it over, it kind of sounds like rain. We used zampoñas, which are pan pipes, which again are Andean. I think Max, who's the narrator, he held a stick which was like a healing stick, but it was made with bottle tops, with metal bottle tops, to get the sound of the shake. And the other instrument we used was a bombo leguero, which is primarily an Argentinian drum instrument made of carved out wood, usually, or from a tree trunk, and either cow skin or goat skin. And we used those instruments to create a sense of place when we were using the music. So the music was very much connecting to the sense of where it was. And some of the pieces of music, one of the ones which I really liked was the Nightmare, which Oscar basically came up with this melody, which was quite kind of quirky and weird, but at the same time, it kind of pulled you in. And from there, I just started the charango picking, and then Oscar, Max, and I just kind of singing, crazy lines around the word rabbit.
That's all.
Yeah. And the final piece is a traditional piece called Carnavalito, which we played and sang, and it was because it's a celebration piece that brings everything together. At the end of the performance, we shared out lots of different instruments. So we took things out. So, for example, the bombo, which is the drum, we kind of turned it into a kind of tree with sticks coming out with plastic bottle tops on strings that looked a bit like branches with leaves. But then we pulled those out and we gave them out to people so that they could play them, because they were kind of shaking instruments. And then we got everyone together to play together the rhythm of Carnavalito.
Absolutely wonderful, and the music was like great, and I could see, obviously, the children had an opportunity to actually have an instrument and to join in as well as at the end. And I think it's that part that really, 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 really delighted not only the children but the adults with them as well. I think it's that idea that they could actually do something and immerse themselves in the story and in the culture as well, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that was one of Oscar's aims, to bring the people that were part of the audience, to bring them on the journey with us.
With them.
Oscar can tell you better that about that. But I think that was very, very natural for it to happen.
And it was natural, and it was quite interesting to see that they weren't just actually playing music; that they were all dancing about as well, which obviously wasn't part of the intention, but it's just a natural thing that actually comes out of having an instrument and hearing music that you're engaged with.
Even Max was dancing.
We were all dancing. Can I just ask you another question? And I guess that this is for everybody. I know that you're intending to hopefully tour this in some form around the Northwest, and particularly libraries in the Northwest. How did you find it's actually performing in libraries, in a big library and small libraries? And what did you get out of that?
The thing about the Mapuche traditions, or rather culture, is of inclusivity, and having the shows in libraries as opposed to big theaters. Theaters tend to divide people into those who go and those who don't go. I wanted to reach mostly the ones that don't go. Library is a more accessible place for the vast community, which doesn't go to the to big theaters and stuff. So I find it much more rewarding because we are closer to people, and also seeing people that you don't usually think of as people that would get into something like this. You know, that they're more like the football and the pint and kind of like, but actually watching old people come into the library and stop and then don't go to what they were going to be doing in the library, but actually watch the whole thing the whole way through. It's something that wouldn't happen in the theater. It's like somebody completely. So it's so much to me. It's so much more part of the Mapuche tradition to do it like that rather than the theater. Theater doesn't kind of like, no, you're not allowed unless you pay, unless you've got the money, unless you've got the means. You're not allowed here. The library was so much. Come on, you want to watch it? Sit down. It's so much. I don't know. It's more part of that. That is part of what we want to present to people.
I would agree with that. I mean, some of the branch libraries that you actually performed in are quite a long way out of the city centre, and some are in areas of quite high deprivation, and very often those, like children outside of a school, don't really have a chance to see any kind of a performance outside, and particularly one that's actually celebrating other cultures as well. So really, for us as a library service, we actually think that it's important to engage those families with storytelling in its sort of basic form and its closest form as well, in the hope that they will be inspired to actually be a musical, or to write, or to read themselves a bit more, and to be creative.
I think for me as well, one of the interesting thing was, all the different libraries went to very different spaces, but very quickly we were able to create an environment that all of those young people immediately sort of locked into, and they weren't in the library anymore. They were in Latin America, seeing this journey of this boy, finding his own name, and that was what was really nice, because you can walk into a space and go, this is a bit weird. But then once the set's up and people have got the costumes on and the children are sitting down, as I say, it's like almost like a bubble where you can then tell the story and they can get involved. So yeah, I really liked working in all the different spaces.
That's great. Of course, imaginative journeys are part of our core business as well, aren't they? So it's a very, very nice fit, actually, for us as a library service. Okay, well, thank you. Oh, Francisco's got something to say about that.
No, it's just I was really gratified, and I really loved the reaction and the welcome of the libraries to the show and to us, and I think that made a big difference to the way we actually performed and the way we worked, because it was we really felt like they wanted us there, and I think that relationship is really important.
Yeah, well, we definitely loved having you, and as we've actually said a few times, that the overall response from the children and the schools and from the library staff and the managers was really, really positive. And I've never really seen a reaction like that to I mean, always have a good sort of touring theatre, but I think that this actually stood out, particularly the sort of staff, because he just said right away to me, do you know what, that show was absolutely brilliant.
No.
So yeah, so thank you, and we loved having you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very
And come
much.
back.
We're working on it.
So thank you, everybody. That was really interesting interviews and chat. We look forward to actually working again together, hopefully in the very, very near future. So thank you, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.